Everyone credits the same guy with inventing the zipper. There's just one problem. His version never worked. It jammed, it popped open at the worst moments, and it nearly killed the idea for good. The zipper that's actually in your pants right now was invented by someone else entirely. A man working alone at a bench whose name never made it to the history books. I'm Aiden Thomas of Hidden History, and this is how we learned to zip up our fly. This is the history of the zipper. Before the zipper, getting dressed took time. Buttons, hooks, laces, an entire Victorian economy of servants built partly around fastening other people's clothes. In 1851, Elias Howe, the same Howe who helped perfect the sewing machine, patented something he called an automatic continuous clothing closure. He never manufactured it. He was too busy in court defending his sewing machine patents. The idea just sat there, untouched, for over 40 years. Fast forward to 1893, the Chicago World's Fair. An inventor named Whitcomb Judson unveils something he calls the Clasp Locker, hooks and eyes joined by a sliding guide. It's the device most history books point to when they say, and that's who invented the zipper. But here's the catch. It barely worked. Early versions tended to break open unexpectedly, and clothing manufacturers who tried it showed little interest. Judson kept trying to fix it. In 1905, he patented an improved version called Security, but it had the same reliability problems. Judson died in December 1909 of stomach cancer at 63 years old, having never seen his invention actually succeed. Commercial success didn't arrive until nearly a decade after he was gone. Judson's company survived on the backing of an investor named Colonel Lewis Walker, who kept it alive through several relocations and name changes. In 1906, the company hired a young Swedish engineer fresh off a stint at Westinghouse as its lead designer, Gideon Sundback. Sundback was a methodical, quiet, and obsessive about the mechanism itself rather than the marketing. He married Elvira Arnson, the daughter of a fellow engineer at the company in 1909 in Hoboken, New Jersey. By several accounts, though the exact details aren't fully documented, Elvira died a few years into their marriage, and Sundback reportedly threw himself into redesigning the fastener even harder afterwards, working alone at the bench night after night. By 1913, Sundback had completely re-engineered the mechanism. Instead of hooks and eyes, he designed interlocking scoop-shaped teeth pulled together by a single slider, mechanically almost identical to the zipper in your jacket right now. He called it the Hookless Number 2 and patented the refined design in 1917. The version everyone credits to Judson never actually worked. The version that works, the one still in use, basically unchanged in principle over a century later, was built by an engineer whose name isn't on a single product you own. You would think a working fastener would sell itself. It didn't, not to fashion anyway. Critics at the time called it morally questionable, on the theory that anything this fast to open made clothing too easy to remove. Fashion houses wanted nothing to do with it. Its first real customer was the military. In 1917, a New York tailor started sewing Sundback's fasteners into money belts for Navy sailors, whose uniforms had nowhere secure to carry money. Almost the entire first year's production went into those belts. Then, in 1918, the Navy placed a much bigger order, fasteners for 10,000 flying suits, for pilots who needed a fast, reliable seal against cold at altitude, often while wearing gloves. Two military use cases back to back did what 25 years of failed sales pitches couldn't. In 1923, the B.F. Goodrich Company put the fastener into a new line of rubber overshoes, galoshes. Company legend says an executive pulling one closed said something like, "Zipper up," mimicking the sound the slider made. Goodrich ran with it and trademarked the name zipper for boots specifically. For years afterward, zipper wasn't a generic word for the mechanism at all. It was one company's brand name for one style of rubber boot. Outside of boots, the fastener spent most of the 1920s stuck as a novelty. So manufacturers pivoted to a market with no fashion snobbery to overcome: children. Late 1920s and 1930s ad campaigns pitched it directly to parents. A zipper meant a small child could dress themselves without fumbling buttons, which fit neatly into a broader parenting movement that valued raising self-reliant kids. Fashion came around slower. In 1934, the Prince of Wales adopted a zip fly, which gave a jolt of respectability in menswear circles. Parisian designer Elsa Schiaparelli went further, putting brightly colored, deliberately visible zippers into her surrealist influence collections, treating the mechanism as a design feature instead of something to hide. Then came 1937, the same year Judson's old company officially renamed itself Talon Incorporated, and what the press half-jokingly called the Battle of the Fly, buttons versus zippers, fought over the front of men's trousers. Esquire magazine came out for the zipper, calling it the newest tailoring idea for men and selling it on one very specific benefit: preventing what the magazine delicately called unintentional and embarrassing disarray. The zipper won. Within a few years, it was standard on trousers across the Western world, the exact category of clothing that had rejected it as vulgar barely a decade earlier. Gideon Sundback died in 1954. He held over a dozen patents. He built the machine that still makes zippers we use today, practically unchanged in principle. And yet, ask most people who invented the zipper, and if they know a name at all, they'll say Judson, the man whose version never actually worked. It wasn't Judson's Clasp Locker that changed how the world gets dressed. It was a quiet engineer's stubborn redesign, sold by a boot company, named after the sound it made, and credited in most memory to someone else. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Hidden History. If so, hit the subscribe button, like the video, give us a hype, subscribe to our email, and drop a comment below with another object you'd like to see an episode on. Next week, we're concluding our trilogy on clothing. Next week, we're covering the prelude to the zipper and is what is keeping your shirt together right now. Next week, we're covering the history of the button. Now, take a look around. History is everywhere.